Welcome back, my friends. Happy Thanksgiving. Today, we're going to do another question and answer video. Occasionally on the community tab of my YouTube channel, I'm going to put out a question prompt asking you to ask me anything about anything. Then read other people's questions and thumbs up the questions you want me to answer the most. So in this video, any question at the time I'm filming that got more than 20 thumbs up, I'm going to answer those questions for you today. The one that got the most thumbs up, 74, is from ZH2184. YouTube just changed basically everyone's handle. You used to be able to have whatever name you wanted. This actually led to a lot of impersonation and scammers, so they've changed it now to this @ symbol and then a unique handle. So there's only one ZH2184. I am now the only Jake Broe, so people can no longer create spam accounts using my name. It's a good thing, but also kind of a bad thing because you can no longer choose your own name if it's already been taken. But let's get to the first question. From the experts you have interviewed and your own reasoning, what do you think are the chances that the Russian army will experience a systemic collapse by summer 2023, like the Russian army experienced in 1917 or the Iraqi army in 91? I think more than likely there will be a political coup before the Russian army fighting in Ukraine actually collapses. I think Putin being taken out one way or another is more likely to lead to the war ending rather than all the soldiers on the front lines just giving up and retreating, basically disobeying orders as long as their chain of command remains intact. But for there to be a true groundswell, a revolution at home, something needs to be done about all these police officers in Moscow and St. Petersburg. These police officers are better equipped and better trained than their soldiers fighting on the front lines. And I guarantee you they're making better money as police officers in Moscow beating up protesters than their soldiers on the front lines are. So for true political revolution coming from the streets to occur in Moscow, these police officers need to stop being paid. Or basically through hyperinflation, the salary that they're getting can no longer cover their costs. These guys need to stop beating on and arresting protesters taking to the streets in Moscow before a true groundswell revolution can occur. The other way out being, once again, a coup inside the Kremlin with either the FSB or the military taking control. But one way or another, even if it's just a coup that ends this war next year, I think the real revolution will occur when the veterans, these are the Russian veterans of this war in Ukraine, come back to Russia, because these guys are going to be very upset that they were sent to die without the proper support or training or equipment. And it's actually been veterans who have led violent revolutions in the past. 1917 being a good example. Those were World War I Russian veterans that were coming back home, disillusioned by the entanglement of the Tsar with their Western allies to get them into this war with Germany and the Austro-Hungarian Empire. A good example from American history, once again, is World War I veterans. They were called the Bonus Army, and they marched on Washington, D.C. I feel like history is kind of forgotten about this event from 1932, but if you were alive in the 1930s, this was a big deal. When veterans who have combat experience, they've seen people die and they've killed people themselves, when those guys start showing up to protest, things with the police start getting interesting. Next question from SB Power. Do you think China could now reclaim land back from Russia, or any Russian regions decide to break away? Yes, I think an economic and a political collapse for Russia is coming. It's very likely. And at this point, I think China is going to pick sides in an internal conflict. And they're going to do so to their own benefit. So here is a map of China. This is the Qing dynasty as of 1820. And you'll notice their border extends all the way to the Pacific Ocean. This is outer Manchuria. And it was during China's Century of Humiliation. Every child in China learns about this in school when Western powers carved up China through their spheres of influence. So you had Japan, they had already taken the Korean Peninsula, they were pushing into Manchuria. You had a German sphere of influence, British, French, the Portuguese were still in Macau, and Russia was coming down from Siberia. They took the coastline along the Pacific Ocean. They basically cut China off from the Pacific Ocean, not having to sail through Japanese waters. So when World War II ended and the Communist Revolution in China occurred, by 1950, China got back all of its old territory. They expelled the Western powers that took all of their land, except Russia, because Russia was the Soviet Union, they had nukes, China didn't know how to get this territory back. But if you're a Chinese nationalist upset about Taiwan, why would you not equally be upset that this coastline that belonged to China for thousands of years isn't part of your territory? So what might happen is if Russia, the Russian Federation, collapses and different regions start breaking up and declaring independence, these regions are going to fight over natural resources because that's where the money is. Where are the oil and gas fields? Where are the mineral deposits? What China will do is they'll pick a side they like. Let's say they say, okay, Union of Central Siberia, we'll send you arms and weapons and financial aid if you help us against those evil people in the Eastern Siberian Confederation. We need to protect you from those bad guys, so we're just going to send our troops in to take right here and help you stabilize the region. I think political games such as that will be occurring, and China's narrative will be, oh, we have to go into this region to stabilize it and protect the ethnic Chinese people living there. It's all about peace, harmony, stability, and give us back this territory. Or China could be super ambitious and just slice all the way to the Arctic Ocean because there are lots of oil and gas resources up here, and China would love a play on the North Pole, especially as the Arctic ice shelf continues to melt and shipping and sea lane traffic is going to increase up here. Either way, Russia is screwed. Next question from Multi-Dookie. Do you think the turnaround of the war in Ukraine will lead to a global economic recovery? First, I'm going to say, and I know in Europe it's a little bit different, but here in the United States, technically, I think, yes, we're in a recession. Economists debate what is the true definition, but the unemployment rate here in the United States is only 3.7%. Anybody that wants to find a job and work can find a job right now. Whereas the last recession, 2008-2009, unemployment peaked at 10%. This was an absolute nightmare. As for inflation, inflation has also peaked. We're getting inflation under control, and this is due to the Federal Reserve and other central banks around the world raising interest rates. This makes it harder to borrow money, which in turn slows down economic activity. This allows for supply chains basically to catch up with demand for business. And I think inflation has peaked. I think it's going to take a while before it gets back under 2%, which is what a healthy, growing economy inflation should be at. So we'll see. But as far as Ukraine, if they can expel Russia from their borders, I think their economic future looks very bright. Ukraine is blessed with good geography for agriculture, and they do have significant oil and gas deposits. Surprise, surprise, they're off the coast of Crimea and primarily in the Donbass region. This is partly why Russia is so interested in annexing this territory. So at this point, I think it's a guarantee Ukraine has to become a full member of the EU. They have to economically integrate and adopt the euro. And Ukraine now has to join NATO. This isn't negotiable. You can't say, as part of a peace deal, that Ukraine will remain this buffer state. The reason why is Russia most likely is going to attack Ukraine again in the future. If there's a ceasefire or a pullback, 5 or 10 years, Russia is just going to do this again. So for a super major, let's say ExxonMobil, Chevron, BP, Dutch Shell, for them to partner with Ukraine and put up the capital up front to build the infrastructure necessary to get this oil and gas reserves out, these private companies, they need a security guarantee that Russia isn't just going to attack Ukraine again and then destroy all of their equipment. Ukraine can't get the foreign investment without the security guarantee of being a full NATO member. So this is non-negotiable. Russia forced Ukraine into this scenario where they will become, I think, an EU and a NATO member within the next couple years. Step one is kicking Russia out, though. As far as the entire global economy, yes, I think we're experiencing a recession. 2023, for everyone's brokerage account, it's not going to be a good year. But going into 2024, 2025, if this war has ended, yes, I think the entire globe will see a recovery, we'll see a bounce. Next question from Awesome HPT. Do you think the Ukrainians will try to launch an amphibious assault across the Dnieper River on their way to liberating southern Kherson and Crimea, or will they try to break through the Russian lines in the Zaporizhia front? I've made this prediction in my videos. Yes, special forces and recon units can get across this river with a very small boat, but you're not going to be able to build a pontoon bridge and get heavy equipment across because the Russians are monitoring the river. If you try to construct a pontoon bridge, Russia should be able to blow that up. So there's no reason for the Ukrainians to try and cross down here by the city of Kherson. So all of this equipment, all of these soldiers, it's already happening. They're pivoting. They're going up here to Zaporizhia or Dnipro to cross the river on bridges that Russia hasn't destroyed. And they're swinging around, building a new cluster. A counterforce is developing, and they're going to go for Melitopol. They're going to go for Mariupol, and they're going to go for Verdansk. They're going to take this coastline back first before they try and go into the Donbas region, before they try and get all this territory down here. It is also worth mentioning that there's not a lot of people down here. If you're the Ukrainian government and your priority is liberating people, down here there's just isn't as much happening. I think if the Russians lose the city of Melitopol, they're going to withdraw and give up on all this territory anyways and pull back to the Crimean Peninsula, but as soon as the Crimean Peninsula is within HIMARS Gimler range, they're going to have to give up the peninsula as well. So here's the next question. Is it likely that Ukraine would focus on liberating Crimea before the rest of the pre-February 24 territories? And as I said, they might push into this upper Luhansk region. This, once again, isn't very heavily populated. But I think the real goal is this coastline. If they can get Melitopol, if they can get Mariupol, everything is within Gimler's range for the Ukrainians. And I think they're going to get rid of that Kerch bridge and just isolate the peninsula. Once basically they're at the door, within an 80-kilometer range, all Russian assets are at play. They're going to get annihilated. Russia will have to abandon the peninsula if they can't resupply it, and they're just getting annihilated by Ukraine's HIMARS. The true challenge, I think, will be getting this Donbas region back, because when you zoom in, this is pretty densely populated cities, Donetsk and Luhansk. And I don't know what these people living here think of the central government in Kyiv. How pro-Russian are they, especially after their entire adult male population has been mobilized and grinded up and expended by the Ukrainian military. Getting back these two cities, if the Russians, even if the Russian military pulls out, it comes down to the locals. How hard are they going to fight? So I think this region right here will probably be the last that the Ukrainians end up taking. Next question. How can we prevent Russian propaganda from seeping into the average American's infospace? Can be relevant due to Musk's buying Twitter and potentially unbanning previously blocked Russian propagandists. And how do we inform the isolationists about the importance of supporting Ukraine and having a strong foreign policy as well? So I don't engage with people who support Russia or are choosing not to support Ukraine. All the facts are there. You can just watch the videos for yourself. It seems undeniable to me how evil Russia is, but also just incompetent the Russian military is. I continue to be impressed and inspired by what the Ukrainians have been doing. And as for idiots like Elon Musk, he's lost my support forever. I'm never going to be able to look at this guy favorably again because of his Ukraine-Russia peace plan, in which he said Crimea needs to become forever part of Russia. He's made this analogy in the past that for Russians to give up on Crimea, that's like the United States giving up on Hawaii. Not quite the same. And he even called it in his tweets Khrushchev's mistake, giving administrative control of the Crimean Peninsula to the Soviet Republic of Ukraine back when they were part of the USSR. Why does Elon Musk have this opinion that even though in 1991 no one disputed the borders, everyone recognized Crimea was part of Ukraine, it remained part of Ukraine for 28, 26 years? Elon Musk is just wrong. And he's pissing off a lot of people unnecessarily. 3 in 4 Americans say the United States should support Ukraine despite Russia's threats. Supporting Ukraine is popular, and as the Ukrainian military continues to succeed on the battlefield, support for Ukraine only goes up. So why do idiots like Elon Musk continue to regurgitate and promote Russian talking points, Russian propaganda? I don't know. But if you've been following me on Twitter, I've been trashing this guy, and I will continue to trash any person that repeats Russian talking points, Russian propaganda. But as soon as Russia loses this war, all the people who supported Russia, they're just going to pretend like it never happened. That's kind of what people do when their side loses and they're not directly involved. If they ever casually supported Russia or were critical of Ukraine, they're just going to ignore it. They're just going to pretend like they never did it. So these people are irrelevant. I'm just going to ignore them. Next question from Iron Beast. That's a good name. What are the chances of Japan taking back the Kuril Islands or U.S. taking Wrangler Island when all this is said and done? I don't think the United States is going to try and take any islands from Russia part of this deal. It's not necessary. The United States doesn't need to. But as for Japan, I support the Japanese claim to these 4 islands. At the end of World War II, the Soviet Union was preparing for an invasion of Japan if they didn't surrender to the Americans. So the Russians were island hopping, the Soviets were island hopping, and they had already taken these Kuril Islands. And after World War II ended, there was a dispute. Japan wanted the islands back. The Soviets deported all the Japanese citizens on these islands back to the mainland, and then they kept them for themselves. Russia does this because they want to be able to navigate these waters without Japanese or Western interference. There's also, I'm sure, natural resources, fishing rights, that kind of stuff. So Japan is our Western ally. These islands have been in dispute for 70 years. I'm fine with it being part of the negotiating treaty that in order for this war to end and Western sanctions to be lifted, Russia has to give these islands back to Japan. I'll support that claim. I don't think Russia will be in any position to resist or negotiate, so I think we should end this dispute and Japan should get its islands back. Next question. Jake, why are you such a fantastic person? Cheers from Poland. And I'm going to have to give my father credit for my upbringing. He's an immigrant from the Netherlands. I'm a first generation Dutch American. And my father, I don't know who to compare him to because I've only ever had one father. But in my opinion, he's always done the right thing. Growing up, he was never racist, he was never sexist, he was never homophobic. He's a small business owner and he's always been truthful and honest with all of his business dealings. He instilled that in me, that kind of karma, what goes around comes around. So if you want to be successful and benefit in life, you got to pay it out first. You got to be a good person. So that's what I try and do with my own personal life. Thanks, Dad. Next question from Tim Jones. Are there things you miss from your previous career in the military? And yes, I miss the people. I was an officer. I commissioned through officer training school. And all the other lieutenants that I went to tech school with, some came from the academy, some did ROTC and went to different universities. Everyone had a different and interesting background. I liked meeting new people and getting to know them. How the military works, you're always rotating and shifting and changing bases, lots of going away parties, welcoming parties, promotion parties, retirement parties. I do miss the free cake from all of the celebrations. I also miss the customs and tradition. Being in the military, you're part of this tradition going back thousands of years. Every civilization since we started cultivating crops and storing grain, we've had militaries and armies to protect cities and conquer our neighbors. And even the 6 years I did in the Air Force, I still felt like I was part of that tradition, part of that human experience of being in the military. I'm incredibly grateful that I did it. I joined a little bit later than most people did. I commissioned at 32, but fantastic experience. Physically, I don't think I could do the job anymore. Being a missileer, sleeping on a shelf in a launch control capsule, 80 or 90 nights a year, but I'll miss it, but I also won't miss it. I like my freedom currently. Next question from John Fenlon. I have been wondering about this for a while. Putin is 70 years old, but I have never seen a photo of him wearing glasses. I think he must have needed them, if only for reading, for many years now. Is this sociopathic vanity? He thinks he looks less dangerous wearing glasses? I think you're 100% correct. Putin, the last 2 decades, has done everything he can to publicly shape his image as basically a messiah of Russia. He wants the people to view him basically as the second coming of Christ, to protect and deliver the Russian people, to rebuild their empire and lead them into the Fourth Reich that will last for 1,000 years. So yeah, he can't look like a nerd. He can't be wearing glasses. I'm sure he's had LASIK eye surgery done in Switzerland from the best doctors in the world, so he probably has better than 20/20 vision, but no, he's not going to be seen wearing glasses like some mere mortal. Next question, what more can be done to stop Iran supplying weapons or to prevent Russia from using third parties to buy components? This is a breaking news story this week. I didn't mention in my video, but US intel says Iran agreed to help Russia build more drones to use in Ukraine. So this is Iran who's going to be teaching the Russians how to build these drones in Russia, and Iranians will be managing the plant. Isn't Russia supposed to be the second most powerful military in the world, how can they not have the scientists or engineers to do this themselves? But this is where we are in the year 2022. So how can we stop this? I don't think the United States can do anything more to sanction or diplomatically put pressure or punish Iran. So we need European partners that still do business with Iran, that refuse to sanction Iran, that still have strong diplomatic relations with Iran. I think those countries need to step it up to let the Iranians know, you need to back off. You're supplying kamikaze drones that are targeting women and children on glass bridges and in public parks and in school buildings. Is this what you want the whole world to associate with you, Iran? But as for this factory being built in Russia to spit out these drones, I think Russia's going to collapse before they can ever successfully start mass producing these things. Final question. Hey Jake, in a previous video, you said that Russia would collapse if the crude oil fell to $45. If the barrel remains around 90, what will that allow Russia to keep its head above water? So surprisingly, the price of oil has been going down since the United States had their midterm elections. Today it's at 79 for West Texas Intermediate. All three of the major averages trend the same. I do think that as central banks continue to raise rates, the Fed is going to meet again in 3 weeks to raise it another 50 or 75. Global demand is dying. In the comments section, everyone is laser focused on supply. Oh, we need to drill more. We need more pipes. We need to... People are obsessed with supply, but they don't think about demand in aggregate. If everyone in the world just does a little bit less, that has a huge impact on the demand for oil. If demand goes down, the price goes down. And we're getting there. Russia is already running budget deficits every month. They're spending more than they're bringing in tax revenue and especially oil and gas revenue. And what's really killing Russia right now is the loss of gas revenue. They're no longer exporting gas to Europe, and they no longer have capacity to store it. And they don't have enough facilities to convert it to LNG, liquefied natural gas, to export it on ship. They just can't liquefy and cool it fast enough for all the gas they're already taking out. All that revenue is gone. Nobody knows what the books look like in Russia, but I guarantee you it's not good. It's getting worse every single day. So as the price of oil, gas, and energy in general goes down, we don't know what the magic number is, but Russia's hurting. They don't have access to the international bond markets. They're not going to survive this global recession coming in 2023. So it's going to happen, and I'll be here making videos covering it for you guys. All right, that's all for this Q&A. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed it, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments or questions, let me know down below. Till the next video, take care.